I don't claim to be a real Christian person. I'm a Christian-minded person, Richard, but...
Country music built its legacy on authenticity and keeping it real, but some of its biggest stars lived double lives that would shock their fans. From gospel singers with secret vices to faithful love crooners who couldn't stay married, these 18 legendary artists preached one thing in their songs while doing the complete opposite behind closed doors. 18. Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard's 1969 anthem, Okie from Muskogee, became a cultural touchstone for conservative traditional America. The song celebrated a place where we don't smoke marijuana and people still respected the college dean. It became an anti-hippie, pro-establishment rallying cry during the Vietnam War era, embraced by those who felt threatened by the counterculture movement sweeping America. The irony is that Haggard later admitted he wrote the song while smoking marijuana on his tour bus, passing through Oklahoma with his band. He was an ex-convict who had served time in San Quentin for burglary, had been a habitual substance user, and lived the outlaw lifestyle he seemed to be criticizing in the song. Haggard explained that the song was partially satirical and partially observational about his parents' generation, but many fans took it literally as his personal values statement and made him an unlikely spokesman for traditional conservatism. What makes this complex rather than simply hypocritical is that Haggard genuinely did have respect for traditional American values. He just didn't always live by them himself. He embodied the contradiction many Americans felt: nostalgia for simpler times while living in a more complicated reality. The song's success showed how audiences often project onto artists the values they want to see, regardless of the artist's actual life. Later in his career, Haggard became more politically nuanced, even defending the Dixie Chicks when they were blacklisted by country radio for criticizing President Bush. 17. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis represents perhaps the most dramatic split personality in music history. Raised in a deeply religious Pentecostal environment in Faraday, Louisiana, Lewis believed he was destined for either salvation or damnation, and seemed determined to experience both simultaneously. He recorded numerous gospel albums throughout his career, passionately singing about Jesus and redemption with genuine feeling that moved listeners. Yet his personal life was a catalog of behavior that violated virtually every Christian principle. He married 7 times, including his infamous marriage to his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Gale Brown, when he was 22, which destroyed his career in Britain and severely damaged it in America when the press discovered the relationship. He struggled with substances and alcohol addiction for decades, was investigated in connection with 2 suspicious deaths, including his 4th wife, and lived a lifestyle of excess that contradicted everything his gospel recordings preached. What's fascinating is that Lewis genuinely seemed tormented by this contradiction. He would reportedly weep after performances, convinced he was going to hell for playing rock and roll, the devil's music, despite his enormous talent and success. This wasn't calculated hypocrisy, but rather a man genuinely torn between 2 powerful forces in his life: his religious upbringing and conviction, and his wild, uncontrollable nature that drove him toward excess and sin. His cousin Jimmy Swaggart, the televangelist who had his own spectacular fall from grace involving prostitutes, shared this same tortured relationship with faith and temptation, suggesting perhaps a family tendency toward this particular psychological conflict between righteousness and transgression. 16. Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette's 1968 signature song, Stand By Your Man, has become one of the most controversial anthems in country music history, advising women to forgive their men's failings and remain loyal despite difficulties. The song made her a spokesperson for traditional marriage and female devotion, celebrated by conservatives as an affirmation of women's proper role. The contradiction: Wynette was married 5 times and divorced 4 times, hardly embodying the steadfast loyalty she sang about so convincingly. Her marriages were often tumultuous, including her famous relationship with George Jones, which was marked by his severe alcoholism and increasingly erratic, sometimes frightening behavior. She left him after 6 years, unable to stand by her man any longer, despite genuinely loving him. Wynette later said she regretted the song becoming her signature because people assumed it represented her personal philosophy about subjugating women to men's needs. She insisted the song was misunderstood. It was about choosing to stay in a relationship and work through problems, not about tolerating abuse or mistreatment or surrendering your dignity. The song became a lightning rod for feminist criticism in the 1970s, with many viewing it as anti-feminist propaganda that encouraged women to accept bad behavior from men. Wynette found herself defending both the song and her own life choices repeatedly. 15. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash built his legend partly on his identification with prisoners, outlaws, and the downtrodden of society. His prison concert albums, recorded at Folsom and San Quentin, became iconic, and he was widely seen as an authentic voice of the incarcerated, someone who truly understood their struggles. Many fans believed he'd done hard time himself, that he was singing from personal experience of imprisonment. The reality was more complicated. Cash never served a prison sentence beyond overnight stays for misdemeanor offenses like public intoxication and picking flowers in someone's garden while high on amphetamines. He was arrested 7 times total, but always for minor infractions that resulted in brief jail stays, not prison sentences. His genuine empathy for prisoners came from his own struggles with addiction and his sense of being an outsider and rebel, not from shared incarceration experience. Additionally, Cash famously became a born-again Christian in the late 1960s and recorded numerous gospel albums, positioning himself as a man of faith and redemption, someone who had found Jesus and turned his life around. Yet he struggled with amphetamine addiction for decades, even during his Christian period, relapsing repeatedly despite his professed faith. He also had extramarital affairs, including the one with June Carter, while both were married to other people, eventually leaving his first wife for her. The contradiction between his spiritual image and his personal struggles was real and ongoing, but Cash was relatively honest about it in interviews and his autobiography. 14. George Jones. George Jones possessed one of the greatest voices in country music history and sang heartbreaking songs about love, loss, and loyalty with unmatched emotional authenticity that moved millions. Songs about devotion and heartbreak seemed to come from a deep well of genuine feeling and lived experience. Behind the scenes, however, Jones was married 4 times, and his personal life was chaos incarnate, largely due to his legendary alcoholism that destroyed nearly everything he touched. His drinking destroyed his second marriage to Shirley Ann Corley and his third marriage to Tammy Wynette, country music's most famous couple whose personal drama fascinated the public. Stories of his alcohol-fueled behavior became industry legend, riding a lawnmower to the liquor store when his wife hid his car keys to prevent him from driving drunk, missing performances regularly earning him the nickname No-Show Jones, which damaged his reputation and career, and generally making life miserable for those who loved him and depended on him professionally. The contradiction between the faithful lover in his songs and the unreliable, difficult partner in real life was stark and painful for those close to him. What's interesting is that Jones never pretended otherwise. He was remarkably honest about his failures in interviews and his autobiography, acknowledging the pain he'd caused. His songs weren't aspirational so much as deeply felt expressions of regret and loss, emotions he knew intimately from destroying his own relationships through his inability to control his drinking. In sobriety later in life, he acknowledged the pain he had caused and seemed genuinely remorseful. 13. Hank Williams, Sr. Hank Williams Sr. created some of country music's most enduring gospel and spiritual songs, expressing deep faith and religious conviction that resonated with millions of believers. Songs about seeing the light and finding salvation seemed to come from genuine spiritual searching and religious experience. Yet Williams' life ended at age 29 from a combination of alcohol and substances, having lived a short life marked by addiction, infidelity, and self-destruction that contradicted his spiritual songs. He was married twice, cheated on both wives regularly with various women on the road, drank himself out of the Grand Ole Opry when they could no longer tolerate his unreliability, and couldn't control his demons despite his spiritual songs and apparent religious beliefs. The contradiction between his gospel recordings and his lifestyle was profound and tragic. Williams suffered from spina bifida, which caused him chronic back pain, leading to his morphine and alcohol addiction, a fact that adds complexity to simple moral judgments about his behavior. He was medicating unbearable physical suffering in an era before adequate pain management or understanding of addiction as a disease. Like Jerry Lee Lewis, Williams seemed genuinely torn between salvation and damnation, between the man he wanted to be and the man his addictions made him. His gospel songs weren't cynical cash grabs, but real expressions of his desire for redemption that he couldn't achieve in life, despite apparently sincere efforts. He wrote about the light because he lived in darkness, understanding both intimately. His son, Hank Williams Jr., would later struggle with similar contradictions between image and reality, suggesting this tension may have been both personal and somewhat inherited, or at least learned from watching his father's struggles. 12. Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn became a feminist icon in country music, with songs about birth control, women's independence, and refusing to be treated as property by men. She sang about women's rights and autonomy with conviction and became a powerful voice for working-class women across America who felt unheard. Yet, Lynn stayed married to Oliver Doolittle Lynn for nearly 50 years, despite his well-documented infidelity, controlling behavior, and drinking problems that she wrote about openly. She wrote openly about his cheating in her autobiography, Coal Miner's Daughter, and in songs, yet remained with him until his death in 1996. This created a contradiction between her public image as a strong, independent woman who wouldn't tolerate mistreatment and her private acceptance of a troubled marriage. Lynn has explained that divorce wasn't a realistic option for a woman of her generation, background, and religious upbringing in rural Kentucky. She also genuinely loved Doolittle despite his significant flaws, and he was instrumental in her career, pushing her to perform when she was too shy and terrified to go on stage. She advocated for women's empowerment while living within the constraints of her own time and circumstances. 11. Waylon Jennings. Waylon Jennings was a founding father of the outlaw country movement, which rebelled against the Nashville establishment's control over artists' creative output and sound. He fought against the slick, overproduced Nashville sound and demanded artistic freedom, becoming a symbol of independence and authenticity in country music during the 1970s. The contradiction emerged over time. Jennings eventually became part of the very establishment he'd rebelled against, accepting industry awards, playing by Nashville's rules, and benefiting from the system he'd once criticized as corrupt and creatively stifling. His outlaw image became somewhat commercialized and marketed by the industry he'd fought against. Additionally, Jennings sang about freedom and living life on his own terms while being addicted to amphetamines for years, a dependency that controlled him rather than the other way around, undermining his message of independence. He was a rebel who became respectable, an outlaw who made peace with the law and the establishment. 10. Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty projected a family man image and sang romantic ballads about faithful love and devotion with remarkable tenderness that made women swoon. His smooth voice and gentlemanly persona made him seem like the ideal devoted partner, the kind of man any woman would want. Behind this carefully cultivated image, Twitty allegedly maintained serial infidelities during his decades on the road, with numerous women across the country at various tour stops. The disconnect between his romantic image and his reported personal behavior was substantial and widely known within the industry. Multiple sources from people who worked with him closely suggested his philandering was an open secret in Nashville and among tour personnel. He was married 4 times, which itself suggests the romantic devotion of his songs didn't translate to his personal relationships or ability to maintain commitment. What makes this particularly interesting is how carefully controlled Twitty's public image was. He rarely gave personal interviews and kept his private life extremely private, unlike some artists who were more open about their failings and struggles. This suggests a calculated effort to maintain a wholesome image that wasn't reflective of reality behind closed doors. Twitty himself never publicly addressed these allegations during his lifetime. The contradiction may be more about the impossibility of living up to an idealized image that fans projected onto him than intentional deception on his part. Still, the gap between image and alleged reality was significant. 9. Porter Wagoner. Porter Wagoner hosted a popular television variety show that projected wholesome family entertainment and featured himself as a kind, avuncular figure, promoting traditional values and clean entertainment. He was known for his flashy rhinestone nudie suits and warm on-screen personality that made him beloved by audiences. Behind the scenes, however, Wagoner was reportedly controlling, difficult to work with, and particularly problematic in his professional relationship with Dolly Parton, who he discovered and promoted. When Parton wanted to leave his show to pursue her own solo career, Wagoner sued her for breach of contract and made the separation extremely difficult and acrimonious, dragging on for years. He allegedly tried to control her career and take credit for her success, claiming he'd made her a star and she owed him loyalty. Their legal battle lasted years and cost Parton significant money and emotional energy. Multiple people who worked with Wagoner described him as temperamental and difficult, contradicting his genial television persona and the kindly image he projected to audiences. The wholesome image was carefully constructed for television, while his business practices were sometimes ruthless, and his interpersonal behavior could be controlling. That said, Wagoner and Parton eventually reconciled before his death in 2007, with Parton crediting him with giving her crucial early career opportunities she might not have had otherwise. The situation was complex. He did help her career significantly, but then struggled to let her go when she outgrew the partnership and no longer needed him. His controlling behavior may have come from genuine investment in her success mixed with his own ego and financial interests in maintaining their partnership. 8. Hank Williams, Jr. Hank Williams, Jr. built his career on rebel anthems and anti-establishment attitudes, positioning himself as a rough, independent outsider who didn't play by Nashville's rules or care about polite society. He sang about rowdy living and rejecting the constraints of mainstream expectations with songs that became anthems for rebels. He was born into country music royalty as the son of Hank Williams Sr., given every advantage the industry could offer, and benefited enormously from his family name opening doors. His outlaw image was somewhat manufactured, given that he was Nashville aristocracy from birth, not someone who'd clawed his way up from nothing. He didn't struggle for recognition the way true outsiders did. Doors opened for him because of his last name that would have remained closed to others with similar talent. Additionally, while singing about freedom and rebellion against authority, Williams Jr. has been closely associated with conservative politics and traditional power structures, which isn't exactly anti-establishment or rebellious. His rebel image was more aesthetic than substantive, more about personal style than genuine opposition to power. However, it's also true that Williams Jr. worked hard to escape his father's shadow and develop his own sound, blending country with southern rock in innovative ways. He resisted being forced into the mold of his father's music, which was its own form of rebellion against industry and fan expectations. The pressure of being Hank Williams' son was immense, with constant comparisons and expectations he could never meet. And his journey to establish his own identity was genuine and difficult, even if his outsider image wasn't entirely earned through circumstances. 7. Ernest Tubb. Ernest Tubb carefully cultivated an image as a simple, honest, working-class man, of the people who stayed true to traditional country values and never forgot where he came from. He presented himself as unpretentious and genuine, someone who never forgot his roots or his fans who supported him throughout his career. The reality was more complex. Tubb was a shrewd businessman and savvy self-promoter who carefully managed his image and career with calculated precision that belied his simple image. He understood branding and marketing before those terms were commonly used in country music, essentially creating a sophisticated personal brand. His simple man persona was itself a sophisticated construction designed to appeal to his target audience of working-class country fans. He made smart financial decisions, built a music business empire including his famous Ernest Tubb record shop in Nashville, and was far more business-minded than his humble image suggested to casual observers. This doesn't mean he didn't genuinely care about fans or traditional country music. By all accounts, he did care deeply about both. But the image of the simple, almost naive country boy was partially performance, a calculated persona. Tubb knew exactly what he was doing in terms of career management and business development. The contradiction isn't necessarily hypocritical. Many successful people downplay their business acumen to maintain relatability with their audience. Tubb's genius was making his carefully managed career look effortless and authentic, as if success just happened to him naturally. He was genuinely committed to honky-tonk music and preserving traditional country sounds, which wasn't calculated, but rather a real passion that drove his choices. 6. Hank Thompson. Hank Thompson sang drinking songs and honky-tonk anthems about wild nightlife, carousing and barroom culture that celebrated the party lifestyle enthusiastically. His music celebrated alcohol and the party lifestyle, making him a favorite of honky-tonk crowds across America, who appreciated his authentic-seeming anthems. The irony? Thompson was reportedly a teetotaler in his private life, rarely if ever drinking alcohol despite singing about it constantly. He wrote and performed songs about a lifestyle he didn't actually live, understanding what his audience wanted to hear rather than expressing personal experience or actual behavior. This is perhaps the most straightforward case of commercial calculation over authentic expression in country music. Thompson recognized that honky-tonk audiences wanted songs about drinking and nightlife, so he provided them professionally, regardless of his personal habits or lifestyle choices. This raises interesting questions about authenticity in country music. Does an artist need to live what they sing about for it to be valid or meaningful? Thompson would likely argue that songwriting is storytelling and entertainment, not autobiography or documentary. And songwriters don't have to be drinkers to write compelling drinking songs that resonate with audiences. The contradiction is only problematic if we expect country music to be purely autobiographical rather than sometimes fictional narrative or character study. Thompson's professionalism and understanding of his market could be seen as smart business rather than hypocrisy or dishonesty. He gave audiences what they wanted while maintaining his personal standards in private life, separating performance from personal behavior effectively. 5. Faron Young. Faron Young projected a tough, macho, hard-living image in his songs and public persona, singing about being a tough guy and living rough without apology. He cultivated a reputation as one of country music's bad boys, who didn't take anything from anyone and lived life on his own terms. Behind this facade, however, Young was known in the industry as insecure, emotionally fragile, and extremely difficult to work with professionally. His tough guy image masked deep personal struggles with depression and self-doubt that he apparently couldn't discuss openly. Multiple colleagues described him as volatile and unpredictable, prone to angry outbursts that seemed to stem from internal turmoil rather than genuine toughness or confidence. His later life tragically confirmed this hidden vulnerability. Young died by suicide in 1996 after years of declining health and increasing depression that he apparently felt unable to address or seek help for. The macho image was protective armor for someone who was actually quite vulnerable and struggling internally. This contradiction is particularly sad because it reflects the pressure on men, especially in that era and in country music culture, to project strength regardless of their actual emotional state or mental health struggles. Young apparently felt he couldn't show vulnerability publicly without damaging his career and image. So he maintained a tough image while suffering privately in ways his friends and colleagues only understood later. His story illustrates how persona and reality can diverge tragically, and how the inability to acknowledge mental health struggles, especially for men in that generation who face stigma, could have devastating consequences. The hypocrisy here is less about moral failing and more about the painful gap between required public image and private psychological struggle. 4. Webb Pierce. Webb Pierce sang heartbreak songs and emotional ballads about lost love and romantic suffering, with great feeling and apparent authenticity that moved listeners deeply. His songs suggested a romantic, perhaps wounded soul who understood emotional pain intimately from personal experience. In reality, Pierce was known as one of the most business-savvy and financially aggressive artists in Nashville, focused intensely on commercial success and wealth accumulation above artistic considerations. He was reportedly shrewd, calculating, and more interested in chart positions and money than the emotional content of his songs or artistic integrity. Pierce famously had a guitar-shaped swimming pool at his home and drove a car decorated with silver dollars embedded in the exterior, displaying wealth ostentatiously in ways that contradicted the working-class heartbreak and suffering of his music. He understood what sold commercially and delivered it professionally, but colleagues suggested the emotional vulnerability in his songs didn't reflect his actual personality, which was more hard-edged and business-minded than romantic. However, being a good businessman doesn't necessarily make someone emotionally unfeeling. Pierce may have compartmentalized his professional calculation from genuine emotional experiences in his personal life. The contradiction might be more about country music fans' expectations, that artists embody their songs' emotions constantly, rather than understanding that performing is a job and professional skill. Pierce's openness about wanting commercial success was actually refreshingly honest in an industry where many artists pretended money didn't matter to them while pursuing it just as aggressively behind the scenes. 3. Kitty Wells. Kitty Wells recorded It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels in 1952, what's considered the first feminist anthem in the country music, a response song that gave women's perspective and pushed back against male double standards in relationships. She was seen as a progressive voice for women's independence in country music at a time when such voices were rare. Wells lived an extremely traditional, quiet, domestic life off stage, prioritizing her role as wife and mother above all else. She was a devoted wife and mother who didn't particularly identify as a feminist, and was reportedly uncomfortable with the song's controversial reputation and the feminist mantle placed on her. She recorded it somewhat reluctantly at her producer's insistence and was surprised by its success and the way it was interpreted as a feminist statement about women's liberation. Wells maintained a conservative personal life and wasn't particularly interested in challenging gender norms outside of this one recording that became her signature song. The song's feminist message came more from her songwriter than from Wells' personal philosophy or beliefs about women's roles. This creates an interesting case where an artist became a symbol for something they didn't necessarily intend or embrace personally or philosophically. Wells wasn't being hypocritical so much as being a professional singer who recorded a song that resonated beyond her intentions or personal beliefs. The contradiction is less about her behavior and more about the gap between public perception and her actual beliefs and lifestyle. She respected the song's impact and was proud of it, but didn't try to live up to the progressive image fans projected onto her. 2. Lefty Frizzell. Lefty Frizzell sang songs about honesty, integrity, and being true to your word, with remarkable sincerity and emotional depth that made listeners believe in his authenticity. His voice conveyed trustworthiness and authenticity, making him one of country music's most beloved figures during the 1950s and 60s. Behind the music, however, Frizzell struggled significantly with alcohol abuse and was known for infidelity in his marriage to his wife Alice, contradicting the faithful image his songs projected. His drinking damaged his career and relationships progressively, and his personal behavior often contradicted this upstanding character portrayed in his songs about loyalty and honor. Multiple accounts suggest he could be unreliable and difficult when drinking, letting down people who depended on him both personally and professionally. The wholesome image projected by his music didn't match the troubled reality of his personal life and struggles with addiction. Like many artists of his era, Frizzell seemed to be expressing aspirational values in his songs, rather than documenting his actual behavior or lifestyle. He may have been singing about the man he wished he could be, rather than the man he actually was in his daily life. This contradiction was common in country music. Artists often wrote about ideal behaviors while struggling with very human failings that made those ideals impossible to maintain. What's worth noting is that Frizzell's struggles were known within the industry, but carefully kept from the public through deliberate effort, allowing his wholesome image to persist among fans. The gap between public and private was maintained through both his own efforts and industry protection of his marketable image. 1. Roy Acuff. Roy Acuff was crowned the King of Country Music and presented himself as ultra-traditional, deeply religious, and committed to preserving country music's authentic roots and traditional sound. He positioned himself as country music's moral center and guardian of traditional values against modernization and commercialization. Behind this traditional image, however, Acuff was reportedly quite modern and calculating in his business dealings, understanding the commercial side thoroughly. He co-founded Acuff Rose Publishing with Fred Rose, which became one of Nashville's most powerful and profitable music publishing companies, eventually worth millions. He was a shrewd negotiator and tough businessman who understood the commercial side of music thoroughly and pursued profit aggressively. The down-home, simple mountain man image was somewhat at odds with his sophisticated business acumen and corporate success in the music publishing industry. Acuff knew how to play the industry game exceptionally well, while presenting himself as above such commercial concerns and focused only on the music's integrity. Additionally, while publicly promoting traditional values and opposing change, he was pragmatic about the music industry's evolution and made business decisions based on profit rather than purely on preserving tradition as his image suggested. The contradiction was between his image as a simple traditionalist and his realities as a savvy business executive who built a publishing empire. However, like Ernest Tubb, this doesn't necessarily mean Acuff's commitment to traditional country music was insincere. He could genuinely love the music while also being smart about the business side. A simple country boy image was cultivated for public consumption, but the values behind it may have been authentic even if the image itself was sophisticated marketing.